This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Jeff Gardner.
Welcome to the Good Neighbor Podcast. Today we have another good neighbor on, Darcy MacDonell with Common Hospitality. Darcy, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Okay, let's dive right into the good stuff so the audience can get to know you and your business and what you're doing out there. So tell us a little bit about Common Hospitality. What is it you do, Darcy?
Yeah, so we have three restaurants in the core of downtown Orillia. The first one is the Common Stove, which we opened just 2 weeks before COVID, so about 4 years ago now. Then in the middle of, maybe a year and a half later, in the middle of COVID, we opened up a little taps and wine bar called Picnic, right across from Mariposa Market in the core of downtown. Mm-hmm. And then just this past fall in September, we took over a beloved pub, and I think we were able to re-energize it and breathe a bit more new life into it. And that's called the Hog and Penny, and that's off to a great start so far.
Hog and Penny. Very cool, man. And that's where you are right now. You're at the pub.
Yeah, I'm sitting in the back corner here.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Love it. So the first one was open when? Common Stove was open when?
Winter of, 2020, 16 days, calendar days before COVID. And I think we were open for 6 days of business or of trading, as my partner says.
Okay.
So we got shut down.
And that wasn't enough suffering for you, so you needed to open up another one.
Yeah, the Picnic model is kind of neat. Like, there's a shop at the back, right? So we have a bottle shop. We sell steaks from the Common Stove. We bake bread every day. We sell bread. So there was that retail component built in from day one, and that we opened that way, and then slowly introduced sort of the bar restaurant component to it after.
Beautiful. So people can do a little bit of shopping there, but they can also stay for food.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, I love it. So something that I'm so curious about, I'm quite privileged to do what I do and get to meet so many interesting people and learn about different walks of life. The journey, the why is so interesting to me. I think many of our listeners. So why did you get into the restaurant business, the kind of the hospitality business first? And what made you decide to do that? I mean, 2020, you didn't know COVID was happening, but what made you continue through that grind? That's such an interesting story. That was a tough time. So what made you get into the business in the first place?
In the first place, I grew up in Eastern Ontario. My mom had 11 brothers and sisters, and my dad is a farmer politician. So any big holiday, whether it was Easter or Thanksgiving or Christmas, was always sort of at our house with a kitchen full of people eating and drinking, and music always on, and a lot of conviviality and stuff. So I grew up around that. And I was lucky as a young kid to we'd often come up to Toronto, from the farm to Toronto, and stay at the Royal York. And that was a big thing, but go to Toronto steakhouses and stuff with my parents. So I always was exposed to restaurants a fair bit at a young age, and wanted to be my own boss and be an entrepreneur. And so that just I realized that was a natural fit eventually. So I've been in the business for 26 or 27 years now. And I had worked for, Toronto's best with Oliver Bonacini and Charles Caboth, and learned a lot of really valuable lessons with other people's money. And then
it's the way to do it.
It is, yeah. In 2012, I guess it was, I opened my own restaurant in Toronto called Farmhouse Tavern, which was, lucky for me, a huge success. And we had a lot of media attention and a lot of awards and recognition. So it was a really nice platform to kind of start out on my own. And I had that for 8 years. Moved up to Orillia, actually about maybe 8 years ago now. So I commuted back and forth for a little while. And as I was starting to open the Common Stove in Orillia, I actually sold sold the farmhouse in Toronto and just stayed in Orillia full time.
Beautiful. What made you move to Orillia from the busy city of Toronto, where some of the best restaurants in the world, I imagine? I've eaten at a few of them anyways. They're fantastic. What made you come out this way?
Yeah, we had a sweet location in Toronto. We were right down by Ronsonsvale and High Park and Lake Ontario, and I was 5 minutes from work. But my wife got recruited to Orillia. She's a physician up here, does geriatric medicine and internal medicine. So came up to check it out. I wasn't convinced in the first visit. Convinced me on the second visit, but I agreed that I'd come in as long as we lived on the water. So we're lucky to be on Lake Simcoe. And like I said, I would keep farmhouse for a little while. So I commuted back and forth. until I kind of saw opportunities developing in Orillia, identified a bit of a market, and sort of got my ducks in a row to do that in my hometown market now.
Beautiful. I love it. It's like I've done it once already. I can do it again. And your wife's a hell of a salesperson to get you on the second visit. That's a good closing rate.
I know, it was good. It worked out really well.
So before we get into a couple of the other questions, I'm curious, can you tell us a little bit about the food or the experience between the three different places so people can know a little bit more about what goes on in there?
Yeah, so very similar. I mean, we use the same suppliers for every restaurant. So it's same steak supplier, and the same seafood supplier, and the same veg supplier across all three restaurants. Mm-hmm. All our three restaurants are Feast On certified, which means that we buy a large percentage of our food, wine, beer, and spirits from Ontario and support local farmers and local economy. But having said that, all concepts are very different. The Common Stove is a live fire steakhouse. We're right across from the Opera House and the library, so a very big pre-theater, pre-show destination. Mm-hmm. Picnic is very European. Again, that mix of the little cafe with a retail store. It's a tapas and wine bar. We have a lot of raw foods, and we sell a lot of oysters there. So for those who have traveled to Europe, it's a very familiar setting, but maybe a little bit more unique in our market. Mm-hmm. And then the pub, two of my partners, there's three of us sort of that do the Common Stove together and the Hog and Penny together. And then a different chef who's a partner at Picnic. But my two partners at the Stove and at the pub are both British. And Simon's been in Canada for, I think, 5 or 6 years. Ben, maybe a decade or 12 years, but they're fresh off the boat, so to speak, still. And the pub was a perfect fit for us.
Beautiful. I love it. 3 different experiences, all quality, all in our local Simcoe County, Orillia area. Something that I'm curious about, is one of my preferred questions. I like most of them, but there's some that I prefer, is the myths and misconceptions. I find that accurate knowledge can make a huge impact on our lives. Inaccurate knowledge can do the exact same thing, just in a negative way. And I feel like most things out there have myths or misconceptions. So is there any myths or misconceptions about the restaurant industry that people have in their head that they think it's this way, it's not, or maybe even your 3 restaurants that you can share with us and maybe clear up some of these misconceptions out there?
Yeah, I mean, one, probably the most obvious one to me is Food Network. I have a bit of an issue with Food Network. I don't personally watch it. A lot of the reality shows are shows. They're produced. They're set to a storyline, and they show an angle or story that is not necessarily real, but that they want to sell. So I think in the past there's been an unrealistic expectation for some employees coming to the industry because of that. There's been sometimes a negative image for potential guests because of some of those shows. Mm-hmm. So that's one that I have a bit of a, I'm not a huge fan of. Mm-hmm. And then on a more positive side, I think people often don't really realize or forget how complex our industry really is. Like, the reason I love this business 27 years later is that it involves, commercial real estate and marketing and music and uniforms and decor and design and HR and cash flow and taxation. And then, yes, there's food and there's wine and all that kind of stuff, but it's multidimensional and complex and super exciting for anyone who has an interest in the world of business at large.
Oh, yeah. I think that's a great way to put it. There's so many entrepreneurs. Everybody that comes on here is an entrepreneur. And we get to peel back the curtain a little bit. It's certainly the same in our end. What the audience sees is just the stage presentation. Everything behind the curtain, the amount of skills that you have to develop, whether it's food or whether it's marketing, what we do, or anything else, it's just a litany of very valuable skills to put out there in the world. So I hope whoever was listening to that not only going to restaurants like yours, where you learn the food industry, but you learn how to be a business person. You understand the world of business a bit better. I think that's a great point. Outside of business, Darcy, I mean, you are a busy guy, I can imagine. 3 businesses. What do you do for fun? What does Darcy get up to for a little fun, a little relaxation?
Believe it or not, this winter I'm an avid skier, so I have been able to get up to Mount St. Louis quite a bit, actually, even though it's not very snowy out. Yeah. I've had probably 15 mornings or evenings at Mount St. Louis so far this winter. So that's my winter thing. I play a bit of hockey. And like I said, we live on Simcoe, so I like to get out in a paddleboard or kayak or just jump off the dock in the summertime. And it really is, there's a bounty of nature trails here. So whether it's Scout Valley for a day hike, that kind of stuff, I like being outdoors a lot.
Beautiful. Mount St. Louis, my father and I snowboard, he skis. Nice. We're buds. And so we go out to Mount St. Louis occasionally, once or twice a year, Blue Mountain. But Mount St. Louis is definitely our place. We found that we preferred it over Horseshoe Valley. And I'm out there all the time. So it's just the mornings for me. I love night skiing, but the mornings to get on that fresh snow first thing in the day, sometimes I'll start a work day like that. Don't tell my team, but sometimes my phone is on silent because I'm on the hills. Yeah, don't say anything. But that's a great way. I hear it all the time. It's the joy from nature, whether you're in winter or you're in the summer, you're on the water, you're hiking, or you're out on the ski trails. I love it. It's sometimes the simplest things in life that bring us the most joy. I agree. Absolutely. I love that you're out there doing that. So this question, definitely one of my top and probably the most uncomfortable question, but we have it in here for a reason because I like to provide a little context. If we are watching what society throws at us, so social media, cable, or news, something like that, those are a lot of popular places to spend some time watching things. News tends to be a little salacious, quite negative in many cases. So you get an opposite end of the extreme. And then social media is the other side. In many cases, we're trying to polish up our lives and not give our real experience in many cases, make ourselves look better, even to the point of editing. So when somebody's maybe in a tough place and they go on somewhere like social media, they don't resonate. Why is everybody's life so perfect and mine isn't? We know that life is difficult. And sometimes through our most difficult challenges is the most growth, where we can look back and say, I would not remove that from my life. Although it sucked at the time, it's made me who I am. So are there any trials, tribulations, or life challenges that you'd be willing to share with us where they kind of sucked in the moment? Certainly entrepreneurship, there are phases of suck. But when you can look back, you say, I wouldn't have removed that. I wouldn't have changed that if I could go back because it made me who I am today.
Yeah, I'll go maybe backwards from a recent one, and I'll go 3 back, and they'll grow in, I guess in impact and intensity. But just trying to do picnic, I had an idea that I wanted to buy this commercial building downtown. I didn't have all the money to do it. Needed a mortgage. Had to go around hustling for banks and trying to get someone. And then they said I had to be the tenant inside the building. So we didn't set out to necessarily open picnic, more so than I wanted the building. But the restrictions on that forced a different end result. And having to be the tenant in the building is where picnic came from. So that was a couple lots of no's and sort of 2-step backwards, but we got to a really cool thing we're very proud of. That's kind of the most recent one, really. Obviously, just before that, COVID, shook the whole world, forced us to be very creative. And to be honest, I actually really enjoyed that time. It was the first time since I was 16 years old that I was home that much, that I worked that little. I have 2 young kids at home. There's no more, all of a sudden there was no late Friday nights and Saturday nights. And we did stuff at the restaurants, takeout and retail and special events, but they were by and large shorter days. So I quite liked that actually forced downtime and the home time. I made the best of it. And going way back when, I talked about my first restaurant in Toronto, that was called Farmhouse Tavern. And Farmhouse Tavern was an homage to my parents. I grew up on a farm. They both passed away separately from cancer when I was 30, my mom, and then maybe 7, 8 years later, my father. But that first restaurant was an homage to them and how I grew up, and that idea of having people. It wasn't about, people always thought it was about the farm and the food. It was about the farmhouse, the people in the house, the family, the friends, and the social aspect. So that was, a very difficult time, obviously. But it certainly shaped the things I did and the direction that my life and career took.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's a common story in the world of entrepreneurship is you had this family experience. I imagine you guys showed each other's love by being in the same room, by eating and drinking and being married together. And, everybody passes, unfortunately, and it's a painful experience. But now what came from that was this restaurant you said was very successful. You were able to sell that down the line. But I imagine that restaurant brought a lot of joy to people, and your parents' essence in your family was in it.
Yeah.
And then I love what you said about COVID. I don't even really like talking about it so much because I'm a fitness guy. I'm a nature guy. I like being active and I like being around my people. But like you, my business, keeps me busy. And we were able to stay open because there were still businesses that needed help growing. So I was thankful for that, but it was way dialed back compared to our normal time. So I got to spend more time like my dad he's my guy. He's who I work out with and all that. So it was really, I don't know, it got me to really reevaluate how I was spending my days because I work a lot. And after COVID, there's a little bit more balance in my life. It changed my perspective a bit. But so many people had such a hard time that I don't like too often saying, yeah, I had a great time for that 2 years. My fitness went up, my reading went up, my relations went up. But I hear that a lot from people like yourself, people that make their own way. And no matter how shitty the situation is, they're going to find a way to enjoy it. I appreciate you sharing those stories with us, Darcy. Those were good, man.
Sure, it's my pleasure.
What is one thing you wish our listeners knew about your business in particular?
I think one thing the guests will see in our restaurants is that we're very hands-on owners. We're in the restaurants. We both have young families and stuff like that, but we're still in the restaurants kind of every day. Whether it's on a Tuesday afternoon when the kids are in school, obviously a busy Friday, Saturday nights most often. But we're locally owned, hands-on, young family guys that work hard and play hard, and I think we do a good job of giving back to our community. But we're around the restaurants all the time, and that's supporting local, buying local, keeping your dollars in your community and locally is what you do when you frequent our restaurants.
Yeah, such an important piece. That's exactly our motto. That's one of the reasons why you're on here. You were nominated from somebody through our social media threads. So somebody wants to hear from you, and the local aspect of it, just helping our community first. And you can branch out from there, but let's start at home. We all live where we work. So do you. And it's just a great vibe, just helping increase the quality of the lives of our local people by answering problems, providing better experiences. I love that you guys are doing that and that you have 3 of them. I imagine one restaurant is tough. 3, Jesus.
Yeah, keeps me busy.
Yeah, I bet. Something I don't put on the questionnaire. This is my favorite question. I know I've said I have a few favorite. I really enjoy doing this. Hopefully you can tell. But I don't put this on there because I find sometimes people like to script their answers, and we want candid conversations. So I've been very lucky to have some great mentors from a young age. It just kind of happened. And I look at being a son or a brother or a father or a hockey player, or entrepreneur, or whatever, different categories, different facets of life. But the game that I'm playing, the arena that I'm in, is the arena or the game of life. That's the big picture. And my mentors planted this seed at a young age to say, it'd be very prudent to think about the impact that you've created already. Was it good? Was it bad? Or did it do nothing? The impact that you're trying to create today and the impact that you'd like to create forward. You have no idea how long you're going to be here. So take advantage of the time that you're here. And if you could look up after your life is done, bird's eye view, what was your impact on the world? What would you want it to be? So it's something that I think about quite a bit, and I'm very interested to hear from other people. So I like to ask you, Darcy, what would you like your impact to be on your family, your community, your world, whichever one you prefer?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, my 2 girls, I just, my bio is want to be super dad and then everything else.
Yes.
That's by far the biggest impact that I can have, I think, my wife and I. As far as the industry, I do a lot, I think, in this industry. I'm on an advisory board right now at Georgian College in Barrie. I was at Centennial for 5 years. I've taught at George Brown. I've taught at Niagara College. So I've always loved giving back some time and energy to the younger generation coming up in this business. I have some, former staff of mine that own restaurants in Vancouver and in Collingwood, and I find that so cool that, not that I take any credit for it, but people who were maybe a bartender or a server that had me as a manager or an owner didn't get turned off by the business, but realized there was a career there for them and have gone on to do their own projects. I find that really amazing to see and to go to those restaurants and be a guest and enjoy them. It is pretty awesome.
So really just enjoying your life by being a role model, helping people, watching them grow, and impacting the people who come under your wing, essentially, whether it's your kids or people that work in your staff or your community. You're just out there trying to make a better place for us.
Yeah.
I love it, man. That's what we're trying to do. Darcy, how can people find out about you? They know the 3 names of your restaurant, but is there an address or a social media feed or a phone number? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
I mean, they're all a little bit different, I should say. Sorry. I guess Facebook and Instagram, it's an umbrella company kind of thing, but really it's just the Common Stove. Again, is that live fired steakhouse. We do a lot of vegetables over fire. Menu is kind of divided between meat and veg. Mm-hmm. So if that's your vibe, that's where to find us. Mm-hmm. Picnic, again, very European, small, charming, live music on Sundays, the little bodega shop at the back. That's your vibe. We're right in the heart of downtown. And then if you're a pub guy or gal, we have live music at the pub Friday nights, Saturday nights, Sunday afternoons, crazy popular. We're open 7 days a week at Picnic and at the pub. So if you're downtown Orillia, we're easy to find.
Beautiful. So you heard it. 3 different locations, 3 different experiences, 3 different vibes. Find them online, find them on social media. They're all in your local Orillia hub. Darcy, it was a pleasure getting to know about your business story, and even more importantly, you, what you stand for, and what you're trying to do. It was great having you on the show, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast Midhurst. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnpmidhurst.com. That's gnpmidhurst.com or call 705-413-3775.